The only real difference between him and Basil is that he was small and had a very large hen-pecking wife.
I didn't think it was funny. No, I don't believe that. Why does he say that?
A hotel manager goose-steps maniacally across his lobby, flapping his arms and shouting nonsense. The live audience is roaring with laughter, but back at the BBC headquarters, the phones are ringing off the hook with complaints. That one single outrageous moment from Fawlty Towers set off a chain reaction of panic and fury that almost got the show axed from television permanently. Everyone remembers the scene, but almost no one knows the story of the high-stakes battle that happened right after, a fight that could have ended the comedy legend before it even began. The episode that sealed its fate. You see, for any show, there's a line, a boundary between funny and offensive, between satire and insult. For the legendary British sitcom Fawlty Towers, that line was crossed in the most spectacular way imaginable. With a scene so outrageous, it sent network executives into a full-blown panic and nearly got the entire series pulled from the airwaves for good. Many people are crazy about the show, but very few know how close it came to being erased. The episode was titled The Germans, and it remains one of the most daring and controversial pieces of television comedy ever made. The most shocking fact is, it was the 6th episode of the very first season, proving that Fawlty Towers was a ticking time bomb of controversy from the start. The setup was classic Basil Fawlty. The perpetually stressed hotel owner, played by the brilliant John Cleese, suffers a concussion after getting hit on the head during a fire drill. As anyone who knows Basil can attest, he's a disaster on his best day. With a head injury, he becomes an unstoppable force of pure chaos. The timing couldn't be worse, as a group of German tourists is scheduled to check in. Basil, in his scrambled state, becomes obsessed with one simple rule for his staff: don't mention the war. Of course, this being Fawlty Towers, his obsession only makes him mention the war constantly, each time more awkward and excruciating than the last. He whispers it to his waitress Polly, he hisses it at the eternally confused Manuel, and he keeps bringing it up with his German guests, who just want to have a peaceful dinner. But the moment that truly sent shockwaves through the BBC wasn't just the dialogue. It was the physical comedy. Desperate to take an order from a German guest who is struggling to speak, a delirious Basil begins a charade. It starts with him mimicking a steak, then it escalates. To put it mildly, things get out of hand. He puts a finger under his nose to mimic a mustache and begins goose-stepping across the dining room, all while shouting German-sounding gibberish. The live studio audience erupted in laughter. They saw it for what it was, a pathetic man making a complete fool of himself. But for the BBC executives watching at home, it was a catastrophe. The phone lines lit up almost immediately. Viewers were divided. Many found it hilarious, but a vocal portion of the audience was deeply offended, calling the scene tasteless and insulting. The thing nobody tells you is that in 1975, the Second World War was still a fresh memory for millions of people. It wasn't ancient history. It was a lived trauma. The backlash was so intense that the top brass at the BBC held serious discussions about the show's future. Was this comedy, or was it a national embarrassment? There was a genuine fear that the episode could damage the BBC's international reputation. The idea of axing the show wasn't just a possibility. It was on the table. They considered pulling the episode from all future broadcasts, effectively trying to pretend it never happened. This one scene, this single outrageous moment of comedic genius, had pushed the boundaries so far that it threatened to bring the whole magnificent structure of Fawlty Towers crashing down. The pressure from inside the network was immense, but the show had a defender in its creator. John Cleese argued fiercely that the joke wasn't on the German guests or on the war itself. The joke, as always in Fawlty Towers, was on Basil. It was about his monumental ignorance, his social awkwardness, and his complete inability to act like a normal human being. He wasn't a hero, he was the butt of every joke. He was a perfect representation of a certain kind of uptight, prejudiced Englishman that the show was mercilessly mocking. Luckily for comedy fans everywhere, that argument, combined with the show's growing popularity, was enough to save it. But it was a close call. a moment where one of the greatest sitcoms of all time stared into the abyss. What nobody realized was that this wasn't just a random joke gone wrong. From real hotel hell to TV gold, the outrageousness of Fawlty Towers wasn't born in a writer's room. It was born in a real-life hotel, run by a man so unbelievably rude that he might as well have been a fictional character. This is the secret origin story of Basil Fawlty, a tale that proves truth is often stranger and much funnier than fiction. You see, the entire premise of the show was based on a real person, a hotel owner who made Basil look like a hospitality expert. His name was Donald Sinclair, and he was the proprietor of the Gleneagles Hotel in Torquay, England. The most shocking fact is, John Cleese and the rest of the Monty Python crew actually stayed at his hotel in 1970. They were in town filming, and what they experienced was so bizarre, so mind-bogglingly awful, that it became the stuff of legend. Sinclair wasn't just a little grumpy. He was a master of misery, a whirlwind of suspicion and hostility. He treated his guests not as customers, but as personal inconveniences that he had to suffer. What many overlooked is that Sinclair's behavior was so extreme, most of the Monty Python team checked out and moved to a different hotel. The only one who stayed behind was John Cleese, who was utterly fascinated. He saw the comedic potential in this real-life monster and started taking notes. The stories from that stay are incredible. One of the most famous incidents involved Monty Python member Eric Idle. He left his briefcase in the reception area for a short time. Most hotel owners would simply leave it be, not Sinclair. Consumed by paranoia, he became convinced the briefcase was a bomb. So he took it outside and threw it over a wall, just in case it exploded. When Idle asked where his briefcase was, Sinclair reportedly replied with irritation, as if Idle was the one who had caused the problem. Another time, Terry Gilliam, an American member of the Python troupe, was eating his dinner. Sinclair marched over to his table and criticized him for holding his knife and fork in the wrong American way. He seemed to genuinely believe it was his duty to police the etiquette of his paying guests. He was, to put it mildly, a hospitality nightmare. This real-life experience became the bedrock of Fawlty Towers. Cleese and his then-wife and co-writer, Connie Booth, took the essence of Donald Sinclair and amplified it for comedic effect. Basil's snobbery, his rage, his deep-seated paranoia, it all came from Sinclair. Even the dynamic between Basil and his sharp-tongued wife, Sybil, was inspired by Sinclair's own wife, who reportedly ran the hotel with a much more practical, yet firm hand. The thing nobody tells you is that Sinclair was completely unaware that he had become the inspiration for one of the most iconic comedy characters ever created. He passed away in 1981, years before the connection became widely known, never realizing that his terrible customer service had inadvertently made him a comedy legend. This origin story is crucial because it shows that Fawlty Towers was designed from the very beginning to be provocative. It was built on the foundation of a real person's outrageous behavior. So when the Germans episode pushed the boundaries, it wasn't an accident. It was the show fulfilling its chaotic destiny. The chaos didn't stop with that one controversial episode. More than one forbidden joke. While the Germans episode created the biggest explosion, the truth is, Fawlty Towers was constantly walking a comedic tightrope. You can see this everywhere in the show's short but brilliant run. The controversy wasn't a one-time event. It was woven into the very fabric of the series, especially concerning another one of its most beloved characters, the bumbling, well-meaning Spanish waiter, Manuel. Played by the talented Andrew Sachs, Manuel was a core part of the show's charm. His catchphrase, "Que," and his complete misunderstanding of Basil's increasingly frantic instructions were a guaranteed source of laughter in every episode. But not all things are what they seem. Even in the 1970s, some critics and viewers began to question the character. Was Manuel a harmless, funny character? Or was he a crude stereotype that made fun of foreigners with poor English skills? The humor often came from Basil's frustration with the language barrier, leading to him physically and verbally lashing out at Manuel. He'd hit him with a frying pan, smack him on the forehead, and call him all sorts of names. While played for slapstick laughs, it created a dynamic that, through a modern lens, can seem quite uncomfortable. The thing nobody tells you is that Andrew Sachs himself was not Spanish. He was a German-born British actor who created a brilliant and convincing character. But the performance walked a fine line. This debate has only grown over the years. As society has become more sensitive to cultural representation, Manuel has become a frequent topic of discussion. Was the joke about the absurdity of the communication breakdown, or was it simply punching down at an immigrant character? The show's defenders, much like with the Germans, argue that the real target of the humor was Basil. His inability to communicate with patience and his snobbish disdain for Manuel were character flaws being mocked. Manuel, despite his confusion, was always portrayed as sweet-natured and eager to please, making him the sympathetic heart of the show, while Basil was the monster. What many overlooked is that other characters also pushed the boundaries. Take the ancient, semi-senile Major Gowan. He was a permanent resident of the hotel and a relic of a bygone era. In one infamous moment, he uses a racial slur while telling a story, a line that has since been cut from most modern broadcasts of the show. The inclusion of this line in 1975 was a shocking moment even then, designed to show how out of touch and prejudiced the Major's generation could be. It was a stark, uncomfortable piece of social commentary hidden inside a wacky sitcom. These moments, combined with the regular chaos, kept the show on the edge, cementing its reputation as comedy that was not afraid to be dangerous. This pattern of pushing boundaries reveals a deeper truth about the show. It wasn't just about silly misunderstandings. It was a satire of the British class system, of social anxiety, and of prejudice. But by tackling such heavy themes with outrageous humor, it constantly risked causing offense. This begs the question, did all this controversy finally catch up with it? The twist no one saw coming. So, with all the controversy swirling around the Germans, the uncomfortable jokes, and the constant boundary pushing, it seems obvious that the BBC must have finally had enough and axed the show, right? That's the story that makes sense. A show that was too hot to handle, canceled in its prime due to public outrage. But here's the most shocking fact of all. That's not what happened. Not even close. Fawlty Towers was never axed by the BBC. It wasn't canceled at all. The truth behind why one of the world's most popular sitcoms ended after just 12 episodes is stranger, and in some ways more impressive, than any myth. The decision to end Fawlty Towers came from the creators themselves, John Cleese and Connie Booth. You see, writing the show was an incredibly difficult and draining process. Each 29-minute episode was crafted with the precision of a Swiss watch. The plots were intricate farces, where every misunderstanding, every lie, and every slamming door had to be perfectly timed to build to an explosive comedic climax. The thing nobody tells you is that a single script for Fawlty Towers took them about 6 weeks to write. That's more than a month of intense, collaborative effort for less than half an hour of television. For comparison, many American sitcoms at the time were written by a large team of writers in just a week. Cleese and Booth were perfectionists. They refused to compromise on quality, and after finishing the second season in 1979, they felt they had achieved everything they wanted to with the characters. They had reached the pinnacle of what Fawlty Towers could be, and they were terrified of producing new episodes that weren't as good. They had seen other great shows go on for too long, slowly losing their magic and becoming a shadow of their former selves. They were determined not to let that happen to Basil, Sybil, Polly, and Manuel. They wanted to go out on a high, leaving behind a perfect, untarnished legacy of 12 flawless episodes. What many overlooked was the immense personal toll the show took, especially as Cleese and Booth had divorced between the first and second seasons. They continued to work together professionally to write the final 6 episodes, a testament to their dedication, but the process was emotionally exhausting. By the end, they were simply burned out. They had given everything they had to the show, and there was nothing left to give. So, they made the difficult decision to walk away. The show wasn't axed, it was perfected. But in today's world, could a show like Fawlty Towers even be made? Let us know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.